She would be the one cleaning up the shredded foolscap before she, too, was dragged to prison. Honoria's work for the Pimpernel was neither as exciting nor as dangerous as that of the others. Not only was she knowledgeable about Roman artifacts, she possessed the ability to duplicate almost any handwriting. It was a talent she had realized purely by mistake when, after she annoyed him once too often, her father had given her the tedious task of copying old manuscripts. She'd made it more interesting by imitating the penmanship of the author. Her skill had impressed her father, so she'd honed it to perfection. Now the League needed her for her skills in forgery and document creation. She could sign Robespierre's name better than he could, and the papers she made for the aristos escaping Paris looked as authentic as any issued by the Committee for Public Safety. She could duplicate the stamp, the embossing, and every other minute detail. The nature of her work meant she rarely left the safe house. For the most part, she did not mind. The safe house was, as the name would suggest, relatively safe, but in the back of her mind one small point niggled. She hadn't begged the Pimpernel to bring her to Paris so she could be safe. She had been safe in her little room in the back of Montague House. She could have continued making false passports for him there. Honoria had begun forging papers for the Pimpernel because she wanted adventure. She'd wanted to make a difference. She'd wanted to experience life. She'd been hiding from the age of 15. Now, at the age of 26, she wasn't afraid any longer. But she was still hiding behind severe hairstyles, drab, shapeless dresses, and enormous spectacles that did nothing to improve her already perfect vision. Even with her ornaments, Dewhurst had described her as too damned pretty to go out alone. And folks had said she might go out at night, but in daylight you'd draw too much attention. Considering the curfew in effect after dark, the dictate meant Honoria almost never went out. Once Alex had worked her magic, making Honoria look sallow and pockmarked with missing teeth. She'd been able to go out then, but she'd been terrified someone might discover her disguise and begin asking questions. And so she stayed inside and hid herself away. Now she was scheduled to return to London as soon as transport was available. What would she have to show for her efforts in Paris? Ink stains on her fingers and bags under her eyes. How was that any different from London? She'd been forging passports and papers to be used in France for the last few years, not on a daily or even a weekly basis, but a couple one month and a few more several months later. And then Monsieur Palomer had walked into her cramped chamber at the British Museum. He'd been a friend of her father's and knew she had a talent for forgery. She hadn't wanted to hear his tales of the horrors in Paris. She'd read of them in the papers, and that had been enough. But she hadn't been able to make him stop talking, and something about listening to him recount what he'd seen was so much worse than merely reading about it. His eyes had been haunted. He didn't want to go back to France, but he felt he must. He had family and friends trapped in Paris, and he could not leave them to their fate. He wasn't a noble, but a drapery merchant to the nobility. His curtains had hung at Versailles. His factory had been burned and looted, many of his workers killed, and his family threatened. He'd been in England for business and was afraid to go back using his real name. He wanted to save his family, and as many others as he could. Honoria had made him the necessary papers and watched him walk out the door. She'd never seen or heard of him again, and she had looked for mentions of him or his family. Had he died? Had he lived? Had he saved his family? Did anyone care about all the innocent people trapped in the senseless violence of Paris? And if she did, what was she doing about it? Monsieur Palomer had told others in the community of French exiles about her, and the next time an émigré had come to her with a request for false papers, she'd made it known she wanted to work for the Scarlet Pimpernel. She didn't even know if he was real, but if she was to go to France and help, she knew he was her best hope. It hadn't taken long for the Pimpernel to find her. Miss
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.